We'd like to welcome you to another of our off-season softball webinars. So we've had a few of these, and we really appreciate your participation and taking your time to be with us here in the month of January. It kind of feels a little like softball weather today because it was, wind was blowing 700 miles per hour and it looked like it was going to snow. So I felt like it was definitely baseball, softball, track season. I want to thank tonight's presenter, who you all met, if you didn't already know him, during the state softball clinic in December. And the individual who will be presenting tonight is Richard McDonald out of Carlsbad. And he has so graciously offered to do tonight's webinar. And the topic of that will be pre-game and post-game, as you can see from the screen. So without further ado, we'll let Richard jump on in. And if you have any questions, as has been the case in the past, go ahead and type those in the chat area, and Nate and I'll man that and ask Richard at an appropriate time. And then if you've got other questions, we can save those for the end. So Richard, you're on, sir.
Okay, Dana, thank you. Yeah, so I can't see the chat stuff on my side. I had the same issue the last time. So yeah, if you guys can kind of man that for me and let me know what questions or concerns or comments are coming in, we'll go with that. But
we sure will.
Anyway, good evening, everyone. My name is Richard McDonald. I've been officiating softball for about 26 years now. So tonight we're going to cover pregame and postgame procedures. So when we think about pregame, to me, it really starts when, we used to have the weekly meetings and we get assignments from our group leaders or whatever, and now we're going to regional assigners. So you really have to start thinking about your pregame when you get that assignment. And I'm thinking, I'm talking about like, where's the location? Where are we going to be going? Who's driving? And of course, my favorite part of it, where are we going to eat? Stuff like that are important questions for me anyway. So, and there's details you have to work out, who's your partner? Where are you going to meet up? Are your uniforms ready? Are they clean? Are your shoes shined? Those kind of things. And I think it's always important to understand that always give enough time to get there. They have road closures. You're going to have traffic accidents. You're going to have other issues. So always leave with plenty of time to get there. Especially if you're going to a new school that you've never been before, and you got to try to track down somebody on where to go. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump right on into it. So I like to arrive myself personally. This says 45 minutes, but I'm always an hour before. That's just something that I do personally. An hour gives me enough time to get there, get oriented to where I'm at, get set, get my equipment ready, do any of those other things that I need to do to prepare myself, get prepared in my mind about what I need to do for the evening, things like that. So when you arrive, one of the first things that I like to do, and you should always notify the administration that your crew is there. Talk to the head coach, the home coach, talk to game admin and say, hey, your crew is here. I want to let you know we're getting changed out there and so on. So, and remember, when you first get to the field, you're always being observed from the time you get there, from the time you leave. And some of the things that I want to cover with that is perception is huge in all high schools, in everything that we do, from my job to each and every one of yours, to our personal lives. Perceptions are huge. So act appropriately. Professionalism is key, from the time you get there to the time you leave, okay? Professionalism in the way you act, the way you talk, the way you walk, especially around people. Remember, we all know there's cell phones and cameras everywhere watching everything we do. Watch what you say is also a big thing. People are walking around. Watch what you say, very, very important, okay? Keep the negativity to a minimum and just keep it to yourself, okay? We talked about the host. Make sure the host administration has given each team a ball to start with. One of the big things that I like to do, especially on a new field, is become familiar with it. And we'll talk about walking the field and that stuff in a moment. But so we want to discuss the ground rules with the home coach after talking with your partner and finalizing ground rules prior to the pregame conference. So, and I'm talking pregame, this is before you even go out onto the field with your partner. You're going to discuss any new rules, rule changes that you guys have, discuss your fair foul coverage, illegal pitches, We've had big discussions about illegal pitches. Stan has been there in the middle of all of that stuff. We, review illegal pitches and who's going to call them. If we're going to call them, we're going to call them. If we're going to see it, you're going to call it. If you're going to call it in the seventh inning, you better have called it in the first inning. If you're going to call them, call them. But make sure you guys are on track with all of that stuff. Okay. Review your tag up responsibilities, miss bases. Make sure you guys are covering those bases. Okay. Review your check swing mechanics, who you're going to go to and when. Okay. Review keeping your count, and of course, warm up pitches and so on. Communicate with your partner. You may have to communicate with players, game admin, but remember, if you're going to deviate from something that you guys worked out, fly ball coverage, say your home plate umpire is going to cover third, even on a triple, etc. If you're going to deviate from something, communicate and be loud about it. And you can communicate, during the game, between innings, meet up, talk about it, but communicate with each other, okay? Review with each other any knowledge of the teams. What tendencies do they have? Are there rivals? Are there going to be any issues with any of the coaches, with the players, with the parents, anything like that? We all have had those issues where there's all kinds of things going on, and it can get, there can be quite a bit of drama in certain, so make sure that you understand that going in, and ways you're going to avoid that, or how you're going to deal with that. Have a mindset ready to go, and how you're going to deal with those controversial situations. Okay. You're going to review your pregame conference with the coaches, which we'll get into more in a minute. I'm going to review the ground rules with your partner. Maybe your partner hasn't been, maybe my partner hasn't been to Carlsbad before. We've got some interesting issues at Carlsbad, and we want to talk about those ground rules so we're all on the same page. We want to make sure we talk to game admin. Is there going to be a national anthem, senior announcements, and so on? Have that prepared in your mind going onto the field, okay? And make sure you arrive in plenty of time, of course. So one thing I want to cover is that we all know and understand that equipment checks are no longer required. We don't have to go in and check every bat and check every helmet, catcher's gear, and so on. However, it is still our responsibility as umpires to inspect anything that comes up that is brought to our attention. Okay, a rattle in a bat, a cracked helmet, a missing screw, whatever. Even though it's not required to do it, we still have to be diligent in the fact that when it comes to our, when that issue is brought to our attention, we have to look into that. We can't just fling it off like it's nothing, okay? So make sure that if somebody brings that to your attention, that you look into that, okay? So remember, the home coach will decide whether the grounds and other conditions are suitable for starting the game. And we're going to lead into that a little bit more in just a little while as far as the starting the game and continuing it, okay? So your pregame conference should be about 5 minutes prior to the start of the game, okay? I usually like to give 10 minutes or so. That just gives enough time for everybody to get there and get set, okay? So obviously you guys, this is obvious, I think, to everybody. It's good to just kind of go through some of these things again, especially for some of our newer officials. The plate umpire is going to facilitate and lead the pregame conference. Obviously, you're behind the home plate, facing the field, and your base umpire is across from you. Your head coaches and your assistants or captains are on the respective sides of home plate. Okay. So again, the home plate umpire, you want to introduce yourself, your partner, kind of get have anybody else introduce themselves, the players or captains. Now it's very important that we verify with the coaches that all players are legally equipped and attired in accordance with the rules. Okay, we all know that. We used to have those cards we have to fill out. Make sure that you do that at your pregame conference. They have to verify that they're properly equipped and attired in accordance with the rules. And then, of course, you have to ask them, have they talked to their players about sportsmanship? If the coaches haven't or don't understand, make sure you deal with that right away, okay? At the pregame conference, make sure you review your ground rules. This says to start with your third base dugout and go all the way around, covering all items. You don't necessarily have to do that, especially if you know certain ground rules for your fields of play, okay? Ask if there's any questions about the rules. Have a quick discussion about it. Make sure that everybody is on the same page before we start the game. And that'll avoid a lot of controversy as we get into issues during the game. Okay, this is important too. Remind the teams if there are questions during the game, after a dead ball, only one person approaches the umpire. Okay, and who should that one person be? Anybody? Anybody? Who should that one person be?
Should be
The head coach.
Head coach.
The head coach, right? How many times have we had an assistant or even a team captain, one of the players come out and want to question a rule interpretation or whatever? Remember, it should be it should be the head coach of that respective team coming out for questions during the game, and make sure they understand that. We've all had issues and we've been there before. Make sure they know that before the game is started at your pregame. Cover that, okay? Remember, check the lineups from each of your team. You look for the first initial, the last name, defensive position, and of course, numbers. Ensure there are no duplicates and hand it back to each coach for inspection. So you're gonna walk up, and I usually start with the home coach and say, Coach, let me see, can I see your lineup? It gives it to me. I'll look through it. Is everything look good on it, Coach? I make sure first initials, last names, DP flex if they have it, the flex is in the right position, and then I say, okay, Coach, I hand it back to him. Do you want to make any changes at this time? No, sir. Okay, now it's official. Okay, so I'll fold it up, put it in my pocket, my holder. I'll do the same thing to the visiting coach. Make sure, because once you do that, now that lineup becomes official. If they're going to start making changes, we got to look at substitution rules and all these other things. Okay, so make sure. One of the things that I want to say is take your time when you do this. Don't rush it, okay? Inspect the lineup cards and take your time. Don't rush through it. I've seen umpires do that, and then they say, well, I didn't make that change. That's not what was on there. Make sure you take your time, okay? Very important. Make sure, we've already talked, make sure that you talk to the coaches about good sportsmanship, okay? And then, of course, anything else you want to add as far as your pregame conference. There's not really anything set you have to say as long as you cover that they're properly equipped and attired and you talk about sportsmanship, okay? So remember, during the pregame conference, don't let the teams be hitting balls, no hit or thrown balls in live ball territory while you're doing your pregame. They should have been done with that already. Make sure they've delivered their respective lineup cards. We've kind of gone already through a bunch of that stuff. Someone have a question? Okay. So some of the ground rules in 4-1-2 and starting a game in 4-1-3, you guys could read through some of that because we're not going to go through every single wording as far as the rules are concerned. Okay. Again, make sure they're properly equipped and attired in accordance with the rules. Very important. Now, something I do want to cover, if there are unusual conditions, obstacles near the playing field, sprinkler heads, I've even been on fields where the light pole is actually in live ball area, so talk to your home coach and figure what special ground rules do they have at the pregame? How are we going to play that? In Carlsbad, we have our dugouts, and the top of the dugout, the lip extends out, extends inward towards the back of the field. So with that, their ground rules, they're playing that ball off the top of that lip of the dugout. They're going to play that ball. If it hits that lip and it comes back in, they're going to play it. They may not want to. We have some fields where the concrete step extends out way beyond the ends of the fence. Okay, some dugouts may not even be fenced. Hopefully they are, but those are things that you're going to have to cover at your pregame. Now, one of the things that you need to discuss too, if both coaches can agree as to far a ground rule, then the umpires are going to come together and set those ground rules. But remember, the ground rules can never supersede a rules book rule. When in doubt, always go to the rule book. What does the rule say? Okay, you can't go wrong if you follow the rules, and that's very important. So ground rules cannot supersede a rule book rule. Always understand that.
Here, Richard, there's a question in the chat from Stan. He asked, do the high school rules say anything about pre-printed lineup cards?
Not to my knowledge, no. I haven't seen anything in the rules talking about pre-printed lineup cards, and I would assume that those would be legal as long as they meet the specification in the rules. You have the first initial, the last name, the defensive position, and so on. So with that, if they're pre-printed and you can confirm that at your pregame, I would say you're good to go. Everyone agree? Stan, you agree?
Yeah, my question deals with the pre-printed, but it also deals with some lineup cards can be handwritten and some lineup cards can be have all the players listed on the bottom.
Right?
The handwritten, does it supersede the printed?
No,
Okay.
I would say no. I think they're just as good.
Okay.
I would say no to that.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. So one of the questions I want to ask you guys, and it's kind of already there, I kind of gave it away, but who has the authority, or who tells us, or who has the authority to say when a game can start?
Coaches, head coach of the home team.
The head coach of the home team. Okay, very good. A lot of times game administration will talk to we'll talk to the head coach of the home team. Okay, the conditions of the field are suitable to start. Okay, so they're going to tell us when to start the game. All right. So when does the actual game start? Anybody? When does the actual game start? You get there, the field suitable. When does it start?
Play ball.
Very good. So the game doesn't actually start until the umpire says play ball. That game has not started until that umpire says that. Okay? Very important. Now, after the game starts and that umpire says play ball, the umpires are the sole judges as to whether conditions are fit for play. Okay? And also same thing with the doubleheader. So we get there and the game admin and the head coach of the home team say, yeah, the conditions are suitable to play. And this has happened to me before in a game. They said, oh yeah, we could play. And I was like, meh. It was raining, and it was windy, and it was cold. I got out there and I said, play ball. And right after that, I said, ball game. I terminated the game due to field conditions. Because at that point, we take over. That's our responsibility. And I'm always going to err on the side of caution. To me, it was a situation where it was not suitable to play. Conditions are bad. And so we had to terminate both of those games, and they had to be replayed. Always act on the side of caution. Always, always, especially when it deals with player health. Okay, always important. Just remember, when they say play ball, you can stop that game if you feel it's not suitable to play. Okay. So now we've already talked about starting a game and pregame and all of that stuff. And now we're going to get in a little bit about how to end a game or when it ends and so on. So I think we all know when a game ends, when obviously the home team is ahead or you play 7 innings, and that's obvious to everyone. Okay. Some of the things that aren't obvious is if you have a suspended game, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but due to weather conditions or darkness and stuff like that. But remember, the game is called or ended. It is a regulation game when obviously we have 5 full innings. If 5 full innings have been played, we have a regulation game. Obviously, and we'll get into all these semantics about the home team and odd numbers of innings and stuff like that. If you're going into the 6th inning and you have to call a game because of some fields don't even have lights, darkness, weather, whatever. So you might go back to the last completed inning, which was the 5th inning for a regulation game. Now, what I do want to say is that when you're not sure about a regulation game, you always have the option of suspending a game. You can suspend it. Maybe you don't want to call the game. Maybe it hasn't met your 5 innings, or you're just not sure. You can suspend a game, write that up, write a report, send it up to Dana and Nate, and let those individuals make a decision on how we're going to proceed moving forward with the game. All right. So game ending procedures. We all know we can adopt those game ending procedures. And one of the ones that we have obviously is the international tiebreaker. Okay. The international tiebreaker can be confusing to some. Now, Stan, I want you to help me out with this and make sure I'm not misquoting this, but it's my understanding that the international tiebreaker is used obviously in high school, in New Mexico high school softball. And you're going to put the batter that is scheduled to bat ninth at second base. Not necessarily the last out, because if you do, there are certain situations where the last out may not be the ninth batter. If you're using a DP flex, if there's been a bunch of changes in the lineup, we've covered this before, and I don't remember the exact situation or scenario, but remember in your head, when you're looking at your lineup, it's the batter scheduled to bat ninth for your international tiebreaker.
You're doing good so far, Richard. Keep going.
All right, sounds good. All right, I'm rolling right along. So obviously, if you haven't completed the number of innings as specified in the rules, you can declare the game a no contest. Okay, and there's ending a game on 4, 2, 4, 5, and 6. Definitely go through there and read that in case it happens, because it could happen, weather and all these other things. So you can declare the game a no contest. Okay, and it could be replayed, especially if you're dealing with games, district games, state seeding and stuff like that. Okay. So number 2, we're just talking about game ending procedures. Fielding records are counted if the game is tied, those kind of things. But remember, we can use the tiebreaker. Okay. We've talked about that a little bit. We can use an international tiebreaker. One of the biggest things is make sure you don't exit until you're sure this says isn't going to be a protest. Let me ask somebody else besides Stan, and I want anybody to chime in. Are protests allowed in high school softball in New Mexico?
No.
Is that you, Larry?
Yeah, there's no protest.
Okay, so there's no protest. I think everybody's in agreement with that, okay? If there's an issue, a rule interpretation, I mean, it can be a myriad of issues. The best thing that you're gonna do, if you can't agree on something, you're gonna make a decision with your partner to the best of your ability, your knowledge and experience, and you're gonna move forward. If the coach wants to write something up, by all means, they'll send it up to Nate and Dana, which they have before. You'll have an opportunity to write something up, and then they'll make a decision from there as to what, they're gonna do with the game. But you, as umpires on the field, are not gonna allow a protest. If you can, by all means, you're going to come together, you're going to talk to your partner, and you're going to make the best decision that you can based on the situation and your time and experience on the field. Okay? Very important that we understand that. We always ask that. I want to protest. No, we can't protest. So be sure you're aware of that. Okay? Be sure to exit the field as a team. You're going to walk out with your partner. Okay, you don't want to walk on opposite ends. And I'm talking about even if you guys are having a conflict. When you're on the field, you guys are professional. You guys are going to act professional. And you're going to be civil to each other and everyone around you. Okay, so exit the field with your partner. And obviously, well, to me, you're always going to exit through the path of least resistance, which is where? The winning side, right? They're probably not going to be as mad at you as the losing side, especially if you made a couple of bad calls that evening. Am I right? So walk out the path of least resistance. So don't discuss the game with players, coaches, or fans, okay? Don't talk about why you made this call, unless you're talking to a coach during, him questioning an interpretation, okay? Usually not good. Again, always be professional in everything that we do. And remember, perceptions are huge. Try to bite your tongue when you have to. It takes a bigger man to hold your tongue than to say what you're really thinking. So always remember that. If you get upset or you get mad at something, bite your tongue, take a step back, take a deep breath, and think about it. Always think before you act. Always think about what you're going to say before you say it. Okay? Very, very important. If you get confronted by the press, always refer them to the home management. It's very important. You don't want to be giving, having a dialogue with the press about this or that and how they're playing and how they're doing. Have them go to the home management and take care of all that. Okay, very important. So now post game with your partner, this is huge. To me, this is one of the things that has helped me tremendously throughout my career, is always have a good post game. I always enjoyed calling games with my partners, and we'd go out and eat and we'd sit down. Maybe we'd even have a cold one or something after the game, and we'd talk about, hey, what do you think about this? We could have done better this. How did I mess up this? And so on. Get away from other people where you can discuss it amongst yourselves, okay? Obviously, start positive, and then everyone always needs a little reassurance that we're doing good things. I've had numerous games in my career where I blew it. Terrible game, just awful. I wasn't there in mind, body, or spirit, and I had bad games. And my partner, he's like, you know what? It's fine. You're going to be all right. You're going to rebound. Let's learn from this and move forward. So we all need that every once in a while, because we're going to have bad games, and I've had plenty of them. So think about that. You want to talk with your partner, difficult situations that occurred, and how can we do this better? Maybe your positioning could have been better. Maybe your angle could have been better. Something. So your best critic is always going to be your partner, because they can see what you're doing and how you're moving and how you're acting. All right. And never take it in a bad way. Always take criticism constructively and have a positive mindset about how you can get better. Because we all want to get better every day in what we do. All right. So again, feedback is very good. And then of course, any reports that you have, ejections, issues that come up on the field, make sure you complete those reports within an appropriate amount of time, usually 24 hours. Get your thoughts together and send it off. And one of the things I want to say with reports is we don't always have to just do reports for the negative things that happen. Yeah, we're doing reports for ejections. Yeah, we're doing reports for different issues that come on the field with fans or whatever. But too often we don't provide reports for the good things that happen in a game. Maybe a pitcher did something really, really well that, she hit somebody and she went and gave checked with the first baseman. Maybe there's some kind of a sportsmanship act that we should acknowledge. Too oftentimes we avoid that and we don't do that. And I want you to incorporate that in you guys, that when you're on the field and you see something positive, write that up. Send that up to Dana and Nate and let them know what the good things that the schools are doing and the players. Very, very important that we're positive, and let's do more of that and get away from the power of positivity is overwhelming. So let's always remember that.
And Richard, I'm glad you brought that up, because we do get overwhelmed with all the negative reports. So it sure is nice when we hear about what's going on that's positive in our schools, because we know that the positive that's going on really does outweigh the negative, but we only hear about the bad stuff. So anytime, you want to recognize a player or a team or even game side administration, if you have an AD who really went above and beyond for you as a crew, anything like that, please just take the time to write it up. It doesn't have to be anything super formal, but just shoot us an email so we can recognize that particular program. I appreciate you bringing that up, Richard.
No, for sure. I mean, we've got teams and kids, student athletes going out and doing community service. I mean, they're mowing yards, they're painting houses, they're doing community projects, and a lot of that goes unnoticed. So it's not just on the field, but it's their activities off the field that we should all acknowledge. I think that's very important. So let's talk a little bit about forfeited games. This is something we all don't want to experience too much. So some guidelines to follow under Rule 4.3-1 is a game shall be forfeited to the offended team by the umpire when they're late in appearing or beginning play after the umpire calls play ball. Now, this is something we need to be very careful with, because if a team is coming in from out of town and they're really late, why are they late? Did they have a blowout? Was there an accident? Is the road closed? What's going on? So before we just jump into forfeiting a game, let's take a step back and let's figure out why. What's going on? Okay. So you can forfeit a game if one of the teams refuses to continue to play. Okay, we start a game or whatever, and whatever the reason, they say, I don't want to play anymore. Well, you could forfeit a game, but make sure that you write that up. Now, my recommendation, instead of jumping on in a forfeited game, is just suspend it. Let's write that up. Let's get that to Nate and Dana, and let's explain to them what happened and let them make a decision on how that game's going to be played. Because remember, we're looking at district complications and statewide seating and all those other things. And, and we're there for these student athletes. Some of these players, juniors, seniors, or whatever, they may not play again after high school. So let's do everything that we can, in my opinion, to try to get them to play and make good decisions that are reasonable. Okay. So obviously you can, delays more than 1 minute resuming the play after the play ball. We all know that. Persistent tactic designed to delay or shorten the game. Let's put an end to that right away. If you see that occurring, let's call time. Let's go talk to the coaches. Let's bring them together and let's say, hey, this is not appropriate. Let's stop this right now. This is not why we're here. We're here for these student athletes and these kids. Let's stop this. Stop it before it becomes an issue. Okay, stop it now. If it continues, make a decision, write it up, let Dana and Nate know what's going on. Okay. Now, obviously, and if same thing, if you're not willfully and persistently violating the rules, okay, after being warned, those are big issues. You have to eject a coach and they persist and don't want to leave. What do? You're going to give them 5 minutes. You're going to give them 20 seconds. Usually the rule of thumb is about a minute. What I like to do, if I eject a coach for a reason, say the head coach, and they refuse to leave or they just want to keep talking, hopefully either my partner has already done this or I'll have to go do this, is I'll have to go get the assistant coach and say, coach, you need to remove him. He needs to go. He needs to go right now. I've given him plenty of time, but he needs to go. And if he doesn't go, the game's going to be forfeited. Okay. And this is not going to look good. Okay. So let's make sure that we are doing everything we can to try to keep them in the game, except for when it's time to go, they need to go. But make sure that I guess my biggest key here is just not pulling the trigger too quick on a forfeited game. Write up a good report, be very detailed about what was said and what happened, take notes after the game, and so on. Okay?
And Richard, in the chat, there's a question from Willie V. Hill. And Willie, I just want to make sure I get this right. So would this be for varsity games only? And are you talking about the late appearance to a game or another part of that?
Yeah, well, part of that is if they show up late for a game, if the game is scheduled to start at 5 o'clock and they're not there at 5:30, we have to ask ourselves why. Okay, maybe why are they late? Are they not coming at all? Did they have, like I said, did they have a blowout? So, I mean, we're not going to wait an hour and a half for them to show up. If they're not there within, 30 or 45 minutes, maybe we need to, call the game off and write that up and send it to Nate and Dana. And yes, the majority of this is specifically towards varsity games, but it does also coordinate to your JV and your C games. They still need to be on time. Coaches still have to be respectful to umpires. You still have the ability and the authority to eject players or coaches, whether it's a varsity or sub-level varsity game. My biggest key is just try to be reasonable, make good decisions, talk to your partner, communicate with each other. And if you have an issue, I mean, like I said, write it up, be detailed, and send it up to, to Albuquerque. And so that's very important.
Did that take care of that, Willie? Okay, he said yes.
Okay, good. All right. So forfeited game goes in if they can't provide 9 players. They have to start the game with at least 9 players. Everyone's agreement to that. Can they finish the game with 8 players? Stan, just nod your head yes or no. Yes. So they have to start with 9. They can finish with 8. Or due to an injury, whatever the case may be, she has to go. I mean, I've had kids had to leave early because they had to go do an assignment for school. The game can finish with 8, but you're going to that batter when she comes up, that's going to be an out. I want everybody to understand that. There's been some confusion there about that. They have to start with 9, but they can finish with 8. And that's under Rule 4-3-1. Okay. We've already talked about the home field failure to comply for conditions of play. And we don't have a protested game. It's in the book, it says it's optional and part of the state association, but we don't have protests here in New Mexico. All right. We have questions and those kind of issues, but there is no protest. Just make sure that we're all on the same page and we all understand that. Okay. Very important.
And
So-
another
Right.
question in the chat, with
Yes.
an ejection, can they finish only with 8?
Well, we're getting into it. You're saying is, I guess, is it if a player is ejected and they only have 8 players? So what do you think, Stan? Can they finish with 8 on an ejection?
So the way the shorthanded rule, I interpret shorthanded rule is if there's an injury to a player
Me
or a
too.
player has to leave. The game is forfeited if the player is ejected
Okay.
and they
So
can't, and they don't have anybody to go in for that player. So yes, game, they cannot finish with 8 on an ejection. It has to be, and unless somebody can find it in the rule, my interpretation is injury only.
okay, I agree with you. I remember seeing something as well to that effect. I wanted to get your opinion. So good. Okay.
And it looks like Bobby Holguin from Las Cruces says forfeit as well. So Bobby's in agreement.
Awesome. All right. We're on the same page and that's what we needed to do. So, okay. So that's really the end of my presentation this evening. And I know we still got about 20 minutes or so left. And let me ask Dana this question. Have you been able to get anything back about that discussion on the media area stuff?
I have not. I did send that to Tammy to forward on to the Federation. I will check with her tomorrow and see if they've responded back to her. So thank you for asking that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still getting some phone calls from some officials and I'm trying to explain my reasoning, and there's still some, I don't know, just some disagreements that we want to get worked out and get that sent out to all the guys so that we're all on the same page and that we're ruling the same way throughout the state. So
I will find that out. And then there's a question going back to the tiebreaker issue. Does New Mexico have a tiebreaker rule? Does it use the international tiebreaker method?
well, it's basically the international tiebreaker that was adopted by the New Mexico Activities Association under their game ending procedures. And so it is a national tiebreaker rule, and it's a rule basically that pretty much the same nationwide. And I think that's why they call it the national tiebreaker rule. But New Mexico has adopted that tiebreaker rule, but it's pretty much similar throughout the entire country from my understanding. And I know different states can have developed different game ending procedures, but ours for New Mexico has used the international tiebreaker.
So just a little bit more on that. The international tiebreaker will start at the start of the 8th inning.
Mm-hmm.
We place the runner on second base. The 9th batter in that order goes to second base. And then once that turn of bat is complete, the both teams have an opportunity. You keep doing that until you have a winner.
Yep.
You could get into a suspended game if it's too dark to play.
Right.
At that.
Yeah, I mean, it could happen. We all know 7-inning games can run into 12, 13. I've had a 16-inning game one time. So yeah, that and then so make sure that you guys understand that rule and how to incorporate that into your games. So good point, Stan. Thanks. Anybody else want to bring up anything else or want to talk about it?
On the tiebreaker rule, the Stan said the 9th batter.
Yes.
It's not the 9th batter in the lineup. It's the last batter from the last inning, which would
Yes.
be the last batter of this inning, in essence. But it's not the last out, and it's not the 9th batter in the lineup.
The last out. Okay.
No, not the last out.
Yes,
It
right.
is the batter. So if the number 5 batter is up right now
Yes.
as the first batter, the number 4 batter would
Yes.
start on second base.
Correct.
I just want to make sure nobody thinks it's the 9th.
Okay, no, I mean, and that's why I wanted to get you guys' input on it, because I mean, even today, I've been doing it for so long, it's still, I mean, confuses me a little bit, but yes, you're right. It's that batter scheduled to bat last. Yeah, I think I worded that right. So, but good point. Thanks for bringing that up.
And there is some stuff in the chat that I'll read to you from Larry in Clovis. With an injury, so that you only have eight players, then that spot will be an out.
Correct. That is correct, according to the rules.
And then from Richard in Las Cruces, he said, my understanding, now we're talking media area, my understanding is if media area is designated as honored before the start of the game. However, if not, and a media member wants to come on the field, they cannot after the start of the game and is not designated.
Correct. That's my understanding as well.
And then I think going back to what we were just talking about with the tiebreaker from Bobby, actually the batter that is scheduled to bat last in case the DP flex is being used.
Yes.
And then back to the media area, sorry, from Richard again, and media area not in live ball area.
Correct. Yeah, that was the whole conundrum that we had the last time, I guess you could say, about the media area. And from what I've read and what I've talked to my colleagues about and some of my mentors in the game is that media area, it has to be in dead ball area. It has to be in dead ball. It cannot be in live ball area. So anything that goes into that area is going to be dead. A ball, a player, whatever the case may be. The media area cannot be in live ball area. It's got to be in dead ball area, and it has to be designated by the game management. But anything that goes into that area, whether it's a ball or a player, is going to be dead. So I know we're going to get some more clarification on that, and I know Dana will send that out to all of us when she gets some wording back from the Federation. I
sure will. And there's a question from Ridge. He asked if you could cover some best methods or recording substitutions, conferences, etc. on the lineup sheet. So I can't say best methods. I'm having a tongue-tied situation. Best methods for recording substitutions, conferences on lineup sheets.
And sure, and I think everybody has their own little method, but I'm going to tell you the method that I use, and I've used my whole career basically. So you have your lineup, and you have 1 through 9 or 10 with your DP flex or whatever the case may be. Now what I do, and the coach comes up to me and says, hey, 13 for 12. I'm going to look at my lineup and say, okay, you have 13 as a sub going in for 12. Well, I'm going to put a slash through 12, and I'm going to put 13 directly underneath them. That tells me that 12 is out of the game. 13 is now in the game. And it's also very important when that coach gives you that change, 13 for 12, that you let the official scorekeepers up in the booth know. And I always let the opposing coach know or their scorekeeper know, hey, 13 for 12. Okay, that's what I do. Now, the next inning, he wants to bring in number 6 for number 8. I'm going to do the same thing. Now, it starts to get really confusing when you're bringing in somebody for the DP or the flex a little bit. Same thing, 6 for 8. The DP, the DP is going to pitch, or the flex is now going to play offense or whatever. Make sure you record that so that you know that. Now, what I also do is if you get into a change and say 13 is coming in for 12, okay, the coach is going to re-entry blue. Go ask the coach, do you want 12 back in for 13? Yes. Okay. So now I'm going to let the other players know. And then I'm going to do this. Now, this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a circle in around the name. That tells me, because that's going to open my eyes, okay, which player is actually in the game now? That lets me know that 12 is now back in the game. Okay. Make sure you understand the re-entry rules. Okay. So that's how I do it. I like to put a slash through it. Cross them out. That tells me they're gone. If they come back in, then I'm going to put a big circle around them. That tells me that player is in the game. So when I go to look, if that happened in the 2nd inning and they go back to the 6th inning and the coach wants to do something in that spot in the lineup and that's not legal, I'll say, coach, no, you can't do that. And here's why. But you have to be able to keep track of that on who's going where and what time at what inning. And you have to know the substitution rules. So it's very important that you understand those and you read through those and understand them when you get into a game. That's how I do it. Now, I know everybody else has a little bit different method, but that keeps me on track on who's in the game, because that's your biggest key, who's in the game and who's not. A slash or a circle. That helps me determine who's in the game or who's not.
And then there was a recommendation to use a multiple colored pen to record changes. That's one of the
Okay.
requires.
Yeah, I've heard that used before too. I know guys have used blue or even red or highlighters and stuff like that to help them. Whatever is going to be visually helpful for you to let you know what's going on. Because especially when you've got these teams that have, 18 players or more, and coach is trying to get them all some playing time. God, I've sat there and every half inning I've had changes, and you have to record those changes on your lineup card. Okay, do it even in JV games, C games, do it every single time. Don't get into a habit where the coach is telling you, okay, 13 for 12. Okay, and then he makes 13 for 12, 8 for 6, 2 for 7, and 9 for 1. Write them all down. Take your time to write them down. And then the next half inning, he's going to yell at you, hey, Blue, 16 for 27. Stop the game. Take your lineup card holder out and write it down. Don't just think in your mind, okay, I remember that. The next half inning, I'll go report it. No, write it down. Write it down. Yeah, excuse me, let me get some water. Write it down and report it. Because if he comes in and tries to say later on, well, I gave you the change. No, you didn't. You don't have it written down. If it's not written down, it didn't happen. Am I right? Avoid that. Take your time. Record the changes. I've had games where I've literally had 10 or 12 or more changes in a game, and my lineup card looks absolutely crazy. Crazy. But if you don't write it down, it didn't happen.
That's a good little point in the chat from Shane. Your lineup card tells the story of the game. You need to be able to read the story to someone else.
Absolutely. Because if you get into a situation where you're going to have to suspend a game or forfeit it, or if that game has to be resumed, man, you have to have your lineup filled out, who did what at what time and all of that stuff, so that game can be resumed from that very exact same point. Make sure that if that happens, you have your count. Make sure what the count is. Write the count on your lineup, because you're going to go home and you're going to clear your indicator. So very, very important. And he's right. The lineup card tells the story of the game. Good point. Very good point. What else?
There's nothing else in the chat. If anybody has any questions, you can feel free to type them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and speak freely. Well, speak freely within reason. It is
Thanks for adding that, Dana.
This is a PG program, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nothing else? If there is nothing else,
Richard, this is Randy. I had a quick question. Is there any discussion of going to standardized lineup cards? Because some coaches provide decent lineup cards, some are scraps of paper. It's a real mess depending upon who you get.
Right. I don't think there's a big push to have any kind of standardized lineup card. I mean, as a coach for my kid, and there's been times where, you know what, I fumbled the football and my mind was wandering and I just didn't have anything to write on. So I wrote on a piece of notebook paper and handed it to the scorekeeper. I mean, is that the ultimate thing that we want? No, but I'm not going to turn away a coach, even in a high school contest, for writing their lineup on a piece of notebook paper. As long as the information is there and it's accurate, I'm going to accept it.
And I haven't heard anything, Randy, from our office about it. I can check with Tammy and see if there's been a conversation as the softball director, but I haven't personally heard anything.
Yeah, I've never heard anything about trying to go to a standardized card or anything like that. So
You won't get a standardized card at any time, because every sports company makes their own type of card. And I've actually been handed a hot dog wrapper with mustard on it as a lineup once.
Oh, yeah,
Delicious.
Yeah, I mean, if it's got the pertinent information on it, I mean, and I'm the kind of guy I like to think outside the box. I mean, if it's got the information on it, I mean, the intent is for the girls to play. That's the intent. And you're right, not every card is going to be standardized. It would be nice to have something that's a little bit more professional looking or whatever, but the intent in high school athletics is for these kids to play. That's the intent. And anything that we can do as umpires to facilitate that and make sure that that happens within reason and within the constraints of the rules, we have a duty to do that. And that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I mean, I understand. Some of these lineup cards we get, they put the substitutions or the extra players on the right under substitute before the game even starts. Just sometimes it just makes a real mess for tracking stuff. And so I was just wondering if there was any,
Right.
had ever been any discussion about trying to move to a more regulated lineup card, but apparently it seems not.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. Some lineup cards have the subs listed on the right, and a lot of lineup cards have them listed on the bottom.
Yeah.
Some coaches even give me lineup cards with the substitution listed directly underneath the position player. I've seen that before. So make sure that when you look at that lineup card, that you understand what that coach is trying to accomplish. One of the big things too is while I'm thinking about it is don't ever allow a projected substitution. We all understand what that means, I think. And a projected substitution is basically, okay, like you said, he put in 13 for 12. Hey, Blue, 13 for 12. Next half inning, 12 is going to re-enter. That is a projected substitution, and we are not to allow that. If he wants to do that, coach, you need to come to me at the next half inning and make that substitution. Projected substitutions are not allowed and shall be avoided at all costs, in my opinion. So don't ever allow a projected substitution, because he may change his mind or you may forget or something like that. But make sure that he comes to you when he's ready to make that substitution in person.
Shane stole my thunder on the lineup card about having a meeting with the coaches on how to write a lineup card.
Right.
One of the things that we might want to do in the future is once the season, before the season, at our district clinic, maybe is just remind the coaches, hey, you know, this would be helpful to the umpires if you have your lineup and your subs down below. I mean, you know, that might help. I don't know, but
We can definitely do that, Stan and Shane. What I'll do, I'm sending myself an email to talk to Tammy about all this stuff for softball on the administrative side. So I'm going to recommend that during the district clinic, since it'll be online this year, it'll be all coaches, all umpires. We can do a little section, and we may actually, you know, have one of you kind of draw one up and show that as a sample so they know what it should look like. But I don't think that'll be a problem to incorporate that into the district clinic and have it as part of the presentation.
I like it. Good idea.
thanks, Dana.
This is how I have to remember things. I get to work in the morning and I have 14 emails from myself. So it's a little bit, and then I get mad because I'm like, who's sending me all these emails? It's me.
If you don't write it down, it didn't happen.
Exactly. See, my emails tell the story, not just the lineup card.
Right. I can only imagine how many you get. So
From myself.
yeah, yourself. That's good. What else? Any questions, concerns, comments you guys want to talk about? We got a few more minutes left. I think we got about 6 minutes left or so.
And I know if there's no other softball stuff, I know Nate has something he wants to share. So I'm not seeing anything else in the chat.
Okay, go ahead, Nate.
All right. So actually, Dana and I have kind of been discussing a few things, and we are constantly talking about or discussing different things. And so we kind of came up with this thing that talks about the NMOA officiating rules to live by. And so you're actually going to be the first to, Dana's going to put it in an article here later this month, and we'll post it a couple places, but NMOA officiating rules to live by. 1, never greet another official sitting down. 2, An official who can communicate well with coaches, players, and partners is the closest thing to an officiating legend. 3, in a disagreement with the coach, you do not have to have the last word. 4, do not throw your fellow officials under the bus. You will one day need them to save you from that exact same bus. 5, hold your mentor or mentors to a higher standard. 6, always return your partner's extra jersey washed and folded nicely. And if you know, you know, because we've all forgotten something. 7, officiate with the mindset that the game does not belong to you. 8, always protect your partners. 9, be like a duck. Remain calm on the surface and paddle like crazy underneath. And number 10, you join the association, you join the family. So don't divide the family. So
Write those up and send them out, Nate, to all of us, please.
Awesome. We'll put them in the next newsletter. So that'll be our February 1st newsletter. You'll see those. I'm glad that you all were available so we could do a little test run and see if they're well received. Stan and Richard, I could see your faces and you were nodding and smiling. So we appreciate that. But we're just, Nate and I have been trying to do stuff just to keep people engaged and think of some stuff outside of the box while we can, since when we have sports, everything kind of doesn't allow us the opportunity to do so. So Nate put those together and I thought they were really cool. And I think it's something that all officials can abide by and kind of learn from and keep in the back of their heads as they interact with other officials and coaches and work games. So Nate, thanks for thinking to do that tonight. I appreciate that.
Hey, Nate.
yeah, what's going on?
So I heard something interesting over the weekend that might go to number 7. And I would say that we're guardians of the game.
Absolutely. But I think that when we decided to write that, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that sometimes we get so involved in the game, we worry about our state tournament assignment. We worry about our next assignment, or did we get the big game? Did we get the 6 or 5A game? Did we get the 3A game? And ultimately, really, the game doesn't belong to us. We belong to it. We are responsible for going out and making a 1A school feel like a 5A school, and so absolutely we're absolute guardians of the game. That is what we do. But ultimately, I think too many times, and I'm guilty of this from time to time, we make this game about us and it shouldn't be about us.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I heard that over the weekend. I thought it was really cool. So
yeah, I use that guardian of the games a lot myself. I think it's something that's important. A lot of times you'll see me write about guardians of fair play or I use that term pretty frequently because I firmly believe that, and it's something that I hope becomes ingrained in our culture here in the NMOA and within the state of New Mexico. So it's we're thinking of new things and just want to make sure we get them out to officials. And I know sometimes we can do too much, so we're trying to just make sure that we send things out a little bit at a time and do what we can. Having these monthly webinars for softball in the off season are awesome, and posting stuff on social media and just trying to stay involved with you all is one of the most important things, especially during this pandemic. And I think the great thing has been we've really learned a lot about how to do more outreach statewide because of the pandemic, that we can move forward into the normal years, whatever normal is. I'm not even sure what that looks like anymore, but we've definitely learned some things, continue to apply, and hopefully it'll keep strengthening the NMOA. So I appreciate all of you that are on this evening being a part of that.
All right, thanks, Dan and Nate, Richard.
Yep, thank you
Okay,
guys.
thanks, Nate.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
Thank you all for humoring us and listening to our rules. And Richard, thank you so much for your presentation tonight. I thought it was outstanding information. It was, as usual, we've recorded this and we'll send out the link in the morning. So if there's anything you want to refer back to, it will be available to you and we'll share it with your colleagues who couldn't be here tonight. Richard, great job. And Stan, thanks for the assist on some of it as well. We appreciate all of you and sincerely hope that we've got you back on the field this year. We're keeping our fingers crossed and we ask that you do too. That's all we can do is pray, think, wish, hope, whatever falls into your own belief system is what we're all doing. So again, thank you everybody for attending. And Richard, thanks for your presentation and we appreciate all of you.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.